until maybe when I was about 37. Because after the first accomplishment of FUBU, I had a fear that people would think I got struck by lightning or one bite at the apple, and I have a sufficient amount of money, but I know now a lot of the things that I should do. And we would then bring, I would license Ted Baker, and we failed at that because we didn't want to open retail. I would then invest in a company called Heatherette, another one, Married to the Mob, Drunken Monkey, Crown Holder, and we would invest in all those, and they weren't taking off like we would like them to. And then when I bought, my partners and I bought Coogee out of bankruptcy and reintroduced Coogee, that's when I started to feel like I've arrived, because now I'm doing it again. Coogee got up to about $150 or $200 million, and then people said, well, he's not a one-trick pony. He understands more what he's doing. But you know, if you get too confident with yourself, you know, early on, and you think you've arrived, disruption is going to happen. Like, we're in the middle of something disrupting the entire planet. Who is going to be able to rise to the top? And the ones who are too comfortable and maybe don't know how to communicate on social media, don't know who their audience is, and they're only depending on retail, don't know how to work virtually, a lot of those people are going to fall by the wayside, you know, over this next course of the year.
Absolutely. So before we're going to open the floor for questions in a moment. So I just wanted to turn to you and say, you know, ask the question, you know, if you not made it because you chose it, if you were never on Shark Tank, where would Daymond be today?
I would, I'd still be like the other guys that I respect and work with. I'd still be a form of a Gary Vee, or, you know, people I respect, Les Brown and Tony Robbins and George Fraser. And I still would be somewhere like that, because, you know, I don't necessarily ever have to work again, but I love what I do. I think that I would be really providing as much content as I could possibly. You know, I think that because I come from a world of inventory. I come from a world of, I gotta pay $6 for this and sell it for 12, whatever the case is. The world of content, the inventory is just right here. I can move around. I can be as fluid as I want, but I just have to have the best inventory here to share with other people. I think that's what I'd be doing that.
All right, so we're gonna open the floor for questions. Do we have a microphone out there? All right, any questions, hands? And you can just step right up, actually. Oh, you want to handle it? All right. I'm going to say this. Let's be as kind and as respectful as possible. At any moment that we feel that you're not being respectful, we'll ask you to put the mic down.
Well, nothing with personal agendas. Just please ask the questions that everybody in this crowd can learn from.
You guys should come and line up on the sides of either sides. Just come and line up.
We have this gentleman right here.
And if you don't have to, well, you have a mic stand there. I would say pull the mic stand up, and so people don't have to necessarily touch it.
Yeah.
Platinum FUBU. Did you have any parts of that, or was that just like a separate brand?
Oh, FUBU's my company. Anything with FUBU on is my brand. Right. Yeah. I want to give you another perspective to that, though. You know, a lot of people in this world tell you need patents and all these other type of things. Sometimes the most effective, the most affordable thing is trademark. I have 100 patents, and I haven't been able to defend any of them. And a patent can cost anywhere from $17,000 to $100,000, depending on how many claims you put in the patent. And people can find ways to get around it. My trademark of FUBU only cost me $2,500, and you can't ever put FUBU in another product without litigation. So a lot of times, just think about that before, as you're out there trying to think about things you're putting out there.
Thank you for sharing so much wisdom. You were saying around '89 you ran into issues funding inventory. If that happened again in 2020, what would you do now if you were a fledgling brand now in 2020 trying to fund inventory?
Yeah, good question. Excellent question. You know what? I ran out of money because I just didn't. Where'd she go? I ran out of money because I didn't know what I was doing, but I only really ran out of $500, $1,000. It wasn't big inventory. What I was doing is I wasn't looking at my numbers. So from a financial intelligence side, you know, listen, I have meetings with my president of my company often, and we're saying, and the reality is business is pretty easy. You have to increase sales and reduce costs. What I would do now is I probably would, with today's environment, I can get pre-orders. from people and say, listen, every month, here are the 3 styles that we're putting out. Put your orders in by the 10th. You'll get on the 20th or 25th, and I can use their money to hopefully get the product out to them, because I met a couple of people that do that. I can have a subscription model, right? Or if I was in retail, I would have to look at my 80-20. Who's my 20% of retail creating 80% of the business? Also, what I started to learn back then is this is why it's important not to go and get funding immediately and go out and try to put your brand out. I started to realize what worked for me and my brand, my 20%. I used to, like all designers, I wanted to put out 10 color shirts, so I put out 10 colors of shirts. But in fashion, 65% of the sales are black, 20% are white, and the mix is in between. What did I do? I cut out 8 colors. I had 10 logos. Only 2 of my logos were really working well. So I cut out 8 logos. I had 5 sizes when I was really small. At that time, guys only wanted 2Xs. Nobody wanted to say they were wearing a small shirt. Even if it was a small shirt, I put 2X in it. So I started getting narrow and deep on my product, and that created that when it went to the store, I sold it, it would have a higher sell-through rate. And so that's what I would have done. If I would have ran out of the money then, I'd have found ways to fund it with other people's money. I would have also found ways to do collaborations and use other people's marketing. That's OPM, right? OPM could be other people's marketing, manpower, mind power, manufacturing, whatever the case is. I would home in a little smaller on my line. I would cut out all the fat, and I would just keep trying to sell at a very small scale. And when I can show these numbers, it can only be duplicated when you decide that you want to grow and take in funding, but you've already had the model in place on who sells, who buys it, what color they buy, what design they buy, where they pay, they're ready to pay $39.99, but they won't pay $49.99. You get really narrow and deep, and you give me the information. So that's why on Shark Tank, if you don't know your customer, we ask for sales. So you don't have to have $1 billion in sales. We just need to know your sales, because if you don't know who your customer is, then you're using my money for tuition. So to answer your question, I would have just got super, super small. Yeah.
All right, so 2 points before I get to my questions. One, you were one of the original founders of Driving a Taxi / Van in Queens.
I started Uber too.
I was a Queens van plan driver. When Archer just opened up, I used to do the route Archer, Guybrush to Rosedale, all the way to Rockaway Beach 116. Wow. And because I was a young hood guy, nobody would work 1 in the morning, but I had my man, my man Al, who they made the movie Belly about, would be next to me. He'd have the ratchet on him just in case, and we just make sure that we were safe.
And then the second part was the marketing. The marketing at night used to paint up like the streets just for like advertising.
What about the marketing?
Like used to paint like the streets.
The street gates.
Yeah. So to me, the way that I see it is it's all out of the box thinking. And so my question is, when it comes to like out of box thinking, what do you do to like put yourself in that environment so you could like think about what others are not thinking about, right?
So what he's talking about is street gates. I would paint I'll go to the stores who pull down the storm gates, and I would say, can I paint your gate a beautiful white and put a beautiful white sign of a local company, so that kids would know that you're supporting a local company and they would want to support you in return. And I didn't care what you were selling. You could be selling Chinese food. It didn't matter to me. But I put authorized FUBU dealer on all these gates, and I would paint about 300 of these gates through New York and New Jersey. But because those gates are pulled down during morning rush hour and sometimes even rush hour, that was $3 million worth of advertising. It was like being bus stops. But also, it's just having common sense in business. And a lot of times, I think we get too inundated with everybody telling us why it works or it can't work, or how it's supposed to be done. And we just sometimes don't say, no, let me do it another way. When we first had our first $1 million to advertise, MTV was charging $6,000 for a 30-second spot. BET was charging $500 for a 30-second spot because a Nielsen rating said these are X amount of people watching BET and X amount of people watching MTV. So we had a choice, and everybody would laugh at us if we go to BET. Now, FUBU was never designed for a color. It was always designed for a culture, but the origin of it is from music made and created by African Americans. And that's what powered it. But I was never going to be disrespectful to other people who loved our culture. I would dress Beastie Boys. I would dress MC Serge. I don't care as long as you are cool. I would dress Eminem if he was out at that time, right? So I didn't want to just advertise on BT and MTV, but I just didn't want to also just advertise on MTV. But what did I say to myself? I said, nah, you remember when Donnie Simpson was on? Remember that? No. I remember saying to myself, there's no way in the world that 5 million people watching MTV and only 500,000 are watching BET. Because you know what? Most of my homies got bootleg cable. All right? And it's 5 people living in that apartment. And they don't have no other place to watch African American programming besides Ralph McDaniels at 3 o'clock when they come home from school. I'm gonna go with the BET one. And so for $500, I bought so many ads, I damn near owned the network, but it would blow the brand up. It was just common sense. Right? So sometimes don't let people come up with numbers and all that other stuff. You know your brand, you know your customer, and you know how to get them. You know their needs and their desires. So that's why the gates and out of the box thinking, it's really just sitting around and thinking of the obvious that's right in your face, but everybody else is telling you it's got to be done another way.
What steps do you take to make sure that you don't abuse your own power and influence? And for context, my name is Chris. I grew up as an undocumented immigrant in Hollis, Queens.
You did what?
I grew up as an undocumented immigrant in Hollis, Queens. So I wanted to kind of thank you for being an inspiration for someone who doesn't look like you, but definitely knew how you grew up. But I was wondering about your...
Thank you. Thank you so much. You look cool to me. Abusing power. Well, first of all, I'm very grounded. And I'm grounded because I have a really great mother. I'm grounded also because, again, I'm a thinker. Many of my staff have known me for years, 10, 15, 20. A lot of them went to high school with me. My first partner met me when I was, I think, 3. My other partner met me when I was 10 or 11. So the minute I get fly, they be like, I remember when you shitted on yourself in 3rd grade. You wasn't fly then. So, you know, having real people around you helps you. But understanding where you are on the spectrum, right? You know, when I walk in the rooms, sometimes I'm walking in the rooms with some of the wealthiest people on the planet. And they're walking in the room, they're looking like they rolled out of bed in their pajamas. When I'm around wealthy people, super wealthy people, I notice the rich people talk about how much money they spent, and the super wealthy talk about how much money they gave away. You know, so it's about a different mentality of walking in the room and learning from the people that are all around. You can learn from the janitor, you can learn all the way from the CEO. I think that's what keeps me, you know, not trying to abuse, you know, my power. So that's all I can say. And have I abused my powers one time or another, or 10 times? Probably coming up. I mean, I don't remember. I'm 51 now, but I've managed to hopefully try to take control of it.
We have time for 3 more.
First and foremost, thank you, Daymond, for bringing your presence for all of us here and giving your knowledge. Those were a lot of jewels that you gave us, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So my name is Coviello Salinas.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, of course. Absolutely.
So my name is Coviello Salinas, and I'm a biochemical engineer and also a CEO of my own company and a wine.
Nice. Say that again. Say it again.
So I'm a biochemical engineer and the CEO of my wine company. And I construct...
So you're using your biochemical knowledge to create wine?
I created the first naturally blue wine in the world, sir.
Nice.
I created the first naturally blue wine in the world. And I have a gift for you as well, you and Kevin, so I have it right here for me. But I want to ask this question to you, because I'm getting in the industry now, I'm getting in a lot of different rooms with a lot of people that do not look like me, right? I've always been in that field where I was in 0.5, right? When you started out, right, and where you're at now, how did you position your brand not only to let yourself know that, you know, I'm still doing it for the culture and for my people, but how did you also allow yourself to understand that, okay, I have to be bigger than that at this point in time? Because since you are the 1%, how did you transition your mind into thinking that every day, like, okay, like I want to touch my people, I want my people to know I'm not leaving them. Like, how did you get to that point of understanding that?
You're saying that how did I basically get to the point where I didn't feel like my people thought I've abandoned them?
Correct.
In what sense? Are you talking about as a business, or are you talking about, like, how are you?
Sure. So currently in the wine industry, there's not many black people in the wine industry, right?
Sure.
But since I created something that is in the wine industry, and I know that I'm gonna have to be the forefront of it, how do I position myself to the point of understanding that, all right, I'm gonna have to be in these different type of arenas and rooms with people that do not look like me, and how do I bring my people up with me at the same time without desecrating my brand?
I'm not sure if I understand that one fully.
So,
because there's two different ways of doing this, right? There's either you saying when you're in those rooms and you walk in with more minorities, those rooms may push you away because you desecrated your brand, they found value in you, or are you saying when I walk into those rooms, because I'm not bringing that many people of color with me at the moment, that I'm desecrating my brand with my people?
That's correct.
The last one. You have to do the best you can for yourself, your family, your brand, right? And if you already have a conscience right now. If you can bring your people up, you absolutely should bring your people up. But sometimes bringing your people up is being a role model that all people can look at and say, I can work with you, and I don't care what color you are. You're a man. You're an excellent business person. I've gotten a lot of backlash from my people, various different ways. I've got a lot of support from my people. When FUBU started to go down and everybody told me don't sell it, those are the same people who never bought it again, right? I haven't been on the cover or highlighted in any African American magazine for the last 20 years. Think about that. And I'm the only African American on television that has nothing to do with sports or music, right? I'm not out there talking about bitches and hoes and stuff like that, but it is what it is, right? I haven't been even talked to by Black Enterprise, right? So you got to do the best. By the way, when my father left at 10 years old and I never would see or speak to him ever again, the man that came in my life, actually, that my mother ended up becoming boyfriend and girlfriend with, that she was with for about 3-4 years, happens to be of the Jewish faith. And he told me something very important. He told me, always be pro-black, but never anti-anything else. And that and love doesn't come in color or gender. And his brother was the lead attorney over here for the freedom of Nelson Mandela. So I always realized that I just got to do the best for my people, of course, but I have to do the best for myself because I'm not doing well for them. I can't bring other people up the ladder. Now, unfortunately, where Bill Cosby is now in his life, it's horrible. But one of the most powerful things he ever did was, Theo was never on crack. You know, nobody in the family had a problem. It was oh my God, what are you talking about? A black doctor and a black lawyer married together in Brooklyn, and they're having the same fun time like the Brady Bunch? And that was one of the most powerful things that he could ever do, to show people that. And when people see me on Shark Tank, here's what my responsibility is. I don't use slang and say bitches and nigga and stuff like that in public because I want people, and generally in private, I want people to see me in a very specific way because I want the next Steve Jobs to be home in his pajamas, or Oprah Winfrey eating cereal watching Shark Tank. But I also get criticized because I happen to marry a woman who's white. And it's crazy that I got criticized for it, because if people would know that my stepfather was white, people would know that my first wife was Dominican, and I love women of all colors, but she found a way to, and my mother, who fought in the Civil Rights Act movement, loves her probably more than she loves me. Then why do I care about what other people think? I'm going to bring people up the ladder that I feel deserve the opportunity to be brought up the ladder. Right? And that's what you have to think. Thank you very much.
First off, I just want to thank you for being here and dropping all this knowledge and wisdom amongst us. My name is Dayshawn Garden. I'm 21 years old. I'm a digital marketer, and I come from the Bronx, raised in the Bronx. My question for you is, I'm trying to start my own digital marketing agency, and seeing as I'm so young, my question is for you: what advice would you tell your 21-year-old self when first starting out in business?
So the first thing I'll share with everybody, please try to understand financial intelligence, the way that money works. All right, I've shared this with people. I think that you should go to school if you want a very specific, career, or if you want to go and learn business and accounting. That's the fundamentals. But number one, the school system is not set up to teach any of us, black, white, or yellow, any of us financial intelligence, because they taught us financial intelligence when we were 8 or 10 or 9 or 12 years old. We're not going to go take a $300,000 loan for education we're not sure we want at 18 years old, right? So first of all, understand financial intelligence. Then if you're a digital marketer, go to people that give them offers they can't refuse. People that you see are in power or but they're lacking. They're 40 to 50 to 60 years old. They run companies, they have financing and they have funding and they have materials and or goods, and say, I see you sitting on a lot of inventory. I can help you move that. You don't even got to pay me, don't worry about it, but I want a vig off of what I'm moving. Now you're using other people's merchandise, right, to go out and put it out there, right? They're just going to sit on it. So find opportune times where you can collaborate and you can use your skills. Now, we all have to have real report cards. Maybe you suck as a digital marketer, and maybe you won't move any goods, but at least you didn't buy that inventory. It was your sweat and your, and your energy and your hard work that you put in that you may have lost, but you'll come back better next time. But in the book, Billie Jean Shaw is exactly what you are. He started off with zero, and then he started handling accounts like Orange Theory and a lot of these people. So in the book, Billie Jean will probably be talking like, it'll be like talking dirty to you.
All right. Thank you. We have time for one more.
Hi.
Hi.
I listened to you on the HBTT, How I Built This, and I really enjoyed that podcast.
Thank you.
My first question is, when naming your brand or your company or your service, are you positioning yourself, if you give it a cultural name or based on race, is that positioning you putting you in a better position, or is it hurting your brand? Like,
it all depends on what your brand is, right? It depends on how narrow and deep you could be, But again, you can always do the tagline for being what it is. I only put For Us By Us on 80 shirts in '89. I never put it on anything else, and so you'll never see it on anything else, but people spread the word about it. So it all depends, It just depends on what your brand is. I tend to like 4-letter to 6-letter words that are brands, and I tend to like brands that it can't get confused what it is, and you won't be having problems globally with trademarks. So there wasn't a Google until you make Google or a Facebook. I tend not to do brands that the name is very generic. Like, Great Taste cookies, you know what I mean? Because then you're going to have litigation challenges. So, first of all, come up with a very cool name, Foursquare, or Uber, words that aren't really existing. And then your tagline can always change. For Us By Us in Korea is for skateboarders. That's just who gravitated towards it. There's a big movement, a gay movement now, that a lot of times I see ads out as For Us By Us, right? That's a certain other community, right? For Us By Us, when I was starting, it was For Us By Us. People love hip-hop, for hip-hop, right? A lot of times your customer will interpret your brand in a whole different way. And who are we not to love our customer, right? That's the only reason we're ever in business, to love our customer. So again, I think the actual 4, 6, or whatever letters of the name should be something very powerful or very random that nobody knows what it is, and your tagline underneath your Nike can always say, just do it, right? So that's what it should be.
I don't mean to take up your time, but the last thing is, because I've often hear that business isn't for everyone, but as I'm learning, I'm thinking it's a training that just about any of us could learn, or do you believe it's for a certain group of
No, and that's a great question. You absolutely should learn how to think like an entrepreneur. The reason that I am able to be here today or whatever is because I have entrepreneurial thinking people in my company. And I'm Batman, I say it all the time, I'm Batman, they're Robin, and half the time, they're Batman, I'm Robin. There was no need for me to hire them to tell them everything they need to do. I like to hire smarter people than me. And over 80% of the people that started in my company started as interns. because they would show up before the people who were getting paid, and they would go home after the ones that were getting paid. And sometimes they left on their internship, and we would call them up a year later or 2 years later because they built, they built influence with us, and we would say, hey, what are you doing? Come work for us. So absolutely, you need to be entrepreneurial thinking at your company.
Let's give a round of applause for Daymond.
Thank you.
The bar is still open. Thank you to our great partners, Hennessy. Don't leave. We'll be out there, and we have special gifts for each and every one of you out there.